Hello. Welcome to the Weather Skool Podcast, where we dive into the world of meteorology, but with a twist. This isn't just about weather forecasts and storm tracking. We're here to hear the stories behind the meteorologists themselves. You'll get to know the people who bring you the weather every day, what drives them, what challenges they've faced, and how their personal journeys shape the work they do. If you're passionate about weather or curious about the lives of those who predict it, you're in the right place. So jump in as we explore the people behind the forecasts and discover what makes meteorologists truly unique. Welcome to Weather Skool, and this is the Weather Skool Podcast Project.
Hi everyone, it's Justin Kiefer from the Weather Skool Podcast Project, and we are happily joining Dan Thomas. Dan is a meteorologist currently located at WSMV in Nashville, Tennessee, Middle Tennessee's voice of wisdom for weather and all things science. And we really appreciate Dan joining us on the podcast today. He's got a really interesting story, a great career. We'll call it a transition, which we'll get to a little bit. But Dan, thanks so much for joining us today.
Hey, my pleasure, Justin. I'm so flattered that you chose me to be part of your show, your program as well. And I've watched a couple of episodes. I did some floating around the website, and you're off to some great things there. So I appreciate you having me. And you telling me that I've had a long career, that a successful career. Your career has been fantastic. So I'd love to hear about you someday as well, and a little more detail about your time in Hartford. And I know that we know each other from Panama City Beach not too long ago.
No, I've been around a while. Yes, in New England, my stop in New England was great. It got me to be a good winter weather forecaster, which was what I needed to do. And on my list of people to interview is Brad Field, who was a mentor for me, or at least I admired him when I worked together in the same city, because Brad was a New England legend in his forecasting. But we'll kind of touch on that, because I know you are a New Englander. So let's begin there. Let's talk about your childhood. Where'd you grow up? And I guess when did weather start being your thing?
Sure. Oh my goodness. Well, I'm from Northeastern Massachusetts, about 30 miles north of Boston. And when I was a kid, I'm now in my 50s, we got snow all the time. We got snow. We had a snowstorm. We had a good snowstorm at least every other week, and sometimes every week, and sometimes two in 1 week. I know everything has changed up there now. My folks still live up there. My sister lives in Maine with her family. But back then, it was a kid's dream, especially for those who love snow. And so the big storms, the nor'easters, whether it was rain or snow, got my attention as a kid. And I grew up in the age when, the news came on at 6 o'clock and the family would watch. But especially, if you're old enough to stay up 10 o'clock, or on the weekend, I would see the 10 o'clock news, even 11 o'clock sometimes. Weather just always got my attention. I think it's in my blood. My aunt, not my aunt, but my aunt, had interest in weather. My brother's very interested in weather. Even my grandfather had some interest back in the day, as I understand. So God put it in me when I was 6 years old. I said to myself, one day I'm going to do this. And in fact, I have a cassette recording, which is now on, I've transitioned it over to my smartphone. And I said, it's rainy, it's snowy, it's windy. That's all the news. This is Danny Thomas. I used to walk around with a little cassette recorder and pretend to be the weatherman. So I'm very blessed. I knew what I wanted to do as a young kid, nice. And now I'm just living out my dream. And so the path was paved for me to do what I needed to do to succeed and eventually get into a good meteorology school. I feel so badly for those who get close to college or in college, and they're like, I just don't know what I want to do for the rest of my life. And I know there's a huge part of the population who are out there who deal with that. So it's a much greater struggle for them to find their spot as something that they're passionate about, and that they'll be successful in.
So that would have had you in Northeastern Massachusetts for the blizzard of '78. Would you have been there for
that? Absolutely. I get some pictures that when I go speak with civic groups, absolutely. It's my whole family except for my dad, he probably went to work that day, or maybe not. But it was my mom. He took the picture. That's what it was. It was my mom and my brother, sister, and me in front of the mailbox. And, the snow, we got 28 inches at my house. And no joke, I still remember that morning when I was 6. and my dad lifted up the garage door. This is too early, too long ago for the electric garage door opener. Lifted up the garage door, and I just remember seeing that wall of snow. The wall of snow. It was just, and when you're only about 4 feet 4 inches high or whatever I was, it's nuts.
I have such fond memories as a real young kid growing up in the Hudson Valley of New York, in the Newburgh, southern Hudson Valley area, of those childhood memories of especially seeing the snowflakes kind of coming down. If it usually always started at night, it seemed like. Yeah. And so you're looking at the street lights, waiting for that first flake to start floating on down, and knowing, okay, here it comes. And then not knowing until the next morning when on the radio you had to hear for the school cancellations. We didn't even have television stations in that area. We could barely pick up the New York stations, and so that was just a fond memory for me. Was just remembering that first flake of snow coming on down.
Oh yeah.
Here it comes.
That's here it comes. And in fact, sometimes I'd leave my window shade open in my bedroom, and my folks would leave on the floodlight because I was right next to the floodlight, and I would just fall asleep to watching the snow fly by. So
awesome.
Just heavenly as a kid. Yeah.
So that took you to, I understand, to Penn State to study meteorology.
Yeah. Yes.
And so, a meteorology degree is challenging for sure. The people that I've talked to have had different paths into and through college. But on the backside of college, what I would gather, did you have a feeling that television broadcast meteorology was it, or did you think of different avenues to take your career?
Yeah, no, there was no question. I wanted to be a TV weatherman. So I didn't care what else was out there. In fact, I did research at Penn State when I got my master's, and I remember distinctly one day looking out the window as I was just going over data, saying, I'm going to poke my eyeballs out if I ever do this full time. Like I just, some people are carved out for that, made for just crunching data, and I'm not. I love to crunch data for a little bit, but then get creative as we do in TV. So I always knew I wanted to do the broadcast side. I remember one day, it was one evening, I'm doing homework in my room that night, probably sophomore, junior year. My dad walked down the hall. He said, "Hey, Danny, you ever hear of the Air Force ROTC?" And I said, "Nope." He said, "Well, they need meteorologists, and you could get a great job coming out of college if you get an Air Force ROTC scholarship. They'll pay for most of your college if you get a scholarship." And I'm like, "Sounds good. I'll try it." So I just applied, and they gave me almost a completely free ride at Penn State. So a lot of kids, college is so expensive, Justin, and I would recommend this to anyone who's interested in a field that the military needs. And the military needs a lot of different people to do a lot of different jobs. It's not just shooting guns and flying planes. Definitely not. And so that's a great way to get to your 4-year college, get that done. They'll even pay for your graduate degree for more of a commitment from you. My payback for them, or to them, was 4 years of active duty service, which essentially means I was a full-time Air Force weather officer for 4 years after college. And then 4 years in the inactive reserves, which means, essentially I'm just on standby in case, we go to war and we're running out of guys. So I fulfilled all that. I served 4.5 years after Penn State, and it was a small price to pay for all they did for me. And on top of that, the leadership stuff, I can tell you more about that whenever you want to hear about it, if you want to hear about it. But it's the things that you get, the scenarios you get put into as a young officer, you would never have that happen as a civilian. So it makes you a stronger person.
Well, first off, thanks for your service to the country. I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know that there was a backside benefit with the college education, but still,
of course,
stepping up and serving your country is a great thing, and I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Now, did you have the opportunity to deploy overseas? I
did. I went to the Middle East. It's funny. My office mate, Cruz Medina, who's been with us a couple of years now, he just turned, late 20s yesterday. So I said, "Happy birthday, Cruz." And then I got to thinking, I'm like, what was I doing? What was I doing when he was born? Oh, yeah, I was in the Middle East. So so he does our weekend evenings. So, yes, I was in the Middle East, deployed there in 97, I want to say, for I guess it was 4.5 months. So I was in the Middle East for 4.5 months. The cool thing about deploying to the Middle East or deploying anywhere is that your pay is tax-free. And so I'm like, I went over there just before Thanksgiving. So I was away from, my family, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, but I came back on like April 2nd. So if you're one day overseas or in a theater elsewhere, not in the continental United States, your whole month is tax-free. So, the fact that we got that early April departure as opposed to late March to come back home was fantastic. But yeah, I was in the Middle East, Bahrain, Sheikh Issa Air Base, Bahrain. So it's an existing air base that was used at the time. And their military was there. We had great relations with them. It was during Operation Southern Watch. So Saddam Hussein, needed to have the weapons inspectors checking on him to make sure he wasn't doing anything nefarious more than we already knew about. And we used to fly over southern Iraq all the time. So I would brief fake bombing missions with fully loaded aircraft to go up there and be ready to engage daily. That was my job.
That's fascinating. Yeah. Fascinating. Yeah. I had a neighbor whose son was an A-10 pilot out of the Air National Guard at Andover, I guess, is the air base in, I think it's that's in Kansas. This was in outside of Springfield, Massachusetts, but I forget, that was where he was based, but he was stationed in the Middle East. And he would tell me that at the flight line that he flew off of, when the surface temperature was 130 degrees on the flight, on the deck, the run out just to get that A-10 airborne, because the air is so hot and so light. And so there's a meteorological challenge for the forecaster in order to brief those pilots. And it never occurred to me that he needed all that extra run out space just to get that airplane airborne because of the heat in some of those desert runways.
Absolutely. Yep. And so we had all different aircraft, different criteria for each of them. We were concerned about something called density altitude, and I even forget how I used that, but that was critical for, helicopter pilots and such to know, the takeoff, the landing, that sort of thing. I got some training in the military for this, but it was probably 6 months worth at a school in Biloxi, Mississippi at Kiefer Air Force Base. And then boom, I'm into full operations. So I've got my college background and then 6 months in the Air Force training, and they're like, go for it. So I was clueless, and then I went through that for 4.5 years and I learned so much. I'm completely focused on the entire atmosphere. And then I transitioned to television, and my job is to say partly cloudy with a chance of rain. So much lower stress.
So where did the first TV job find you? How did you transition out from a military career or position or job into your full-time television job?
Yeah, I knew that I wanted to make that transition as soon as I could. I was even banking leave time or banking PTO or whatever so that I could sell that back and get out even early to get into TV. Couldn't get there fast enough. In fact, the reason I went to Penn State for undergrad, I went to Penn State for grad school as well. The reason I went to Penn State for grad school is largely because they had a TV show. It's called WPSX TV, PBS affiliate, that would broadcast for two-thirds of Pennsylvania, parts of West Virginia, New York as well. I wanted to get on that show. They usually had 1 or 2 graduate students on the show, once a week or twice a month or something like that, and they would have tryouts. So it wasn't a slam dunk I was going to get on, but if I got offers for other grad schools and, full rides for assistantships, but I said, I'm going to gamble and go to Penn State, even though the SUNY Albany, I would have worked for Lance Bozart, who was just explosive cyclogenesis guy. And I just was all over that stuff. I passed that up. Texas A&M passed that up. Penn State, let me take a shot, and praise God, I got the gig. So I was doing some part-time TV at Penn State. That's how I got my AMS seal out of Penn State. And then in the Air Force, I went to Valdosta, Georgia, Moody Air Force Base, my first assignment in Albany, Georgia. Albany. It's right near you.
Sure.
Yeah. WALB was the close, I applied as a freelance guy to Florida, the Tallahassee stations. They didn't need me. Albany said, we're all in. So I filled in on the weekends a lot there. And it was great. So I got experience there.
You're now the 4th person that I know who had the weekend weather position at WALB in Albany, Georgia.
That's probably a tough position to keep filled.
It is the launching pad, is what it is.
Oh, absolutely. Yolanda Amadeo, she was so sweet. She helped me so much. And there was some other guy there 30 years ago who was good to me as well. But Yolanda, she was fantastic. Man, I remember I had my significant other at the time, girlfriend, come and watch me do a broadcast live. And so at Penn State, the way we would do things is I had I would call for the maps to change. I'd say, all right, let's go to the temperatures. All right. And they would change them in the back. Yeah. And so, but at this station, I had a clicker attached to a wire. And I walked over to the wall on this show at WALB where my girlfriend's watching. And I'm going over on the wall and I'm calling for maps to change, and nothing's changing. And I'm like, what is going on with these people? And then I looked over at my anchor and she looks at me and she's got my clicker in her hand like, I'm going to kill you. Like, what is wrong with you? Your clicker's right here. Where is your brain? It was funny. So I had a live audience in studio that day and it caused my brain to just go bananas. And I forgot that at that current station, I didn't call for maps. That was my old station.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
The early on television career, the learning lessons are so, you look back and go, it's a funny thing, but it helps you prepare for whatever's going to come. But something's going to come in television broadcasting at any given time, whether it's the lights exploding above your head, which happened one time for me,
really,
or as you said, forgetting the clicker. Hey, let's fast forward because I want to talk a little bit about as this job does lends you to go to different places across the country as your career unfolds. And I'm sure there were other stops between Albany and New Orleans. Yeah. But you wound up in New Orleans prior to Hurricane Katrina.
Yeah.
And we're integral in the forecasting the before, during, and after part of Katrina for your TV station. And I know there was probably a couple of steps between Albany and there, and you can touch on this if you want, but I really want to kind of dig in a little bit about your experience with Katrina, how that storm sort of affected or shaped your career and your life.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I'll go back to 90 and I'll get to Katrina in 60 seconds. But coming out of the Air Force, my final stop was Vance Air Force Base in Enid, Oklahoma. I started applying to TV stations, Richmond, Memphis, Albany, New York. I was applying to all these mid markets. And Tulsa guy was interested in me. And then he saw my tape. He liked the fact that I had the Air Force experience in AMS SEAL, but he saw my tape and he's like, no, you're not ready. So I ended up going to Fort Smith, Arkansas for 2.5 years. That was part of Hearst Argyle at the time. When I was there, New Orleans flew me down one day to cover Tropical Storm Isidore. They're like, we need another body. We need more hands on deck. We're round the clock. We want someone from our company to come on down. So I went down, had that experience. When I was there, the news director said, if I could hire you today, I would. And I said to myself, wow, praise the Lord. So eventually they did hire me about a year later. I was in New Orleans from 2003 to 2006, so 2003 to 2006. Katrina hits in August 29, 2005. And so I'd been through, in my, up until that point, looking at the last several decades, I was probably at WDSU in New Orleans, the NBC affiliate, for one of the most active 3-year stretches for hurricanes in decades. Yeah. And so I had some experience. Dennis, I think, hit while to the east in Florida while I was down there. There were a number of storms. So Katrina comes along. I can tell you the Katrina story if you got 10 minutes, but otherwise I can compress it. How much Katrina do you want?
Well, I'm really interested in because we both have a sort of a similar impact with hurricanes. Katrina at one point, Category 5, just off your coastline, and so a day or so from making a landfall. As you prepare, as you get ready for the professional part of that, how did you sort of balance knowing what was coming and what you had to do as a professional meteorologist? What, if you can recall, what were you thinking kind of in that day, 24 hours, 36 hours leading up to that?
Yeah. For me, it was a piece of cake because I wasn't married. I didn't own a home. I didn't have kids in school. I just rented an apartment. I had fish. I had African cichlids in my fish tank. That was my only concern, and it was fish, so I wasn't too concerned. So I could fully embrace the event as a meteorologist and, in some ways just take it in and say, this is life changing and I'll never probably go through something like this again. And, but this is what I've been training for the last, 15 years or whatever, my schooling and Air Force experience and other TV experience. So
Right.
I was just locked, loaded, ready to go, and all hands on deck and just fired up. Just was excited to see it. Never seen a hurricane that powerful come our way. That storm hit the coast Monday, August 29th, around 6 a.m. So I was working the Friday evening before. And so the Friday evening before, I distinctly remember the storm is to the east of Florida, to the east of the Florida Peninsula,
Right.
and it's pushing to the west. And it looked like the Hurricane Center bent the track farther from you guys and back toward Pensacola. So that was that Friday evening. I started to, have the hairs in the back of my head sort of raise a little bit. And then I was watching it that evening, and it started as it approached the east coast of Florida, bent down toward Hollywood, bent down toward the south and west. So I said to myself, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to know that the Hurricane Center will continue to shift that track farther westward. That was Friday evening. Saturday, it's all hands on deck. We're round the clock. It was a 175 mile an hour storm about 350 miles away in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico. Thankfully, it slowed down a little bit in terms of its movement toward us. So it gave us all time to get ready for it. My boss, the news director at the time, called everybody together and said, hey, this is the time when you write your family and friends that email that says, you might not hear from me for a while. We have no idea what the backside of this is going to look like. And he said, this is also the time when I can't keep you here anymore. If you feel that you need to leave, go do your thing. Go do your thing. If you can stay, we need you.
Wow.
And then he said, that whole side of the room over there, that's 80 to 90% of you, we're going to Jackson, Mississippi tonight. These few people, including me, so it's just a handful of us, are staying behind to do the coverage in New Orleans until the storm hits and go through the storm. So, of course, I'm like, sweet, So that was Saturday. Saturday night, so the storm is still getting closer to the coast. I remember going out to try to get gas. I, of course, had no gas because I was in my early 20s or late 20s, and I let the tank go down to almost nothing, like people that age do.
Right.
And almost nobody had gas. So I went into one service station to buy some waters, and the clerk at the counter, there was a line of 20 of us in line to buy whatever we wanted. And I remember him saying, he must have been a 65-year-old native. He said to all of us, I've been through Betsy. I've seen the worst. Y'all are panicking about nothing. And I'll never forget that. And then so I left that service station, and then I'm driving to go to another one. Something is zigging and zagging in front of me in the dark. It's like 11:30 at night, and I couldn't make it out, and I hit it. And it was very unfortunate. It turned out to be a black cat. Yeah. And so that was not good. And then I got to the final service station who had gas. They had gas there because I saw some guy getting gas. And so he drove away. I pulled in behind him. I put the thing in my car, and no gas came out. So I'm like, oh, don't even do this. So I went into the gas station and I said, hey, I need to get some gas. And the guy said, no gas. And I said, no, you do have gas, because I just watched that guy put gas in his car. And he said, no gas. And I said, Justin, I don't know if you've ever played this card, but I played it probably 2 or 3 times in my career. And I said, I know you don't want me to get a bunch of news cameras and bring them outside, because this is a great news story. I work for, WDSU or whatever. And he said, okay, make it quick. So he let me get gas. He was saving the gas for his family and friends, but I had to pull that card. I mean, I had no gas. And then so I got it that night, went back to the station on Sunday. We all put our cars in the parking deck, and then the storm was hitting. We're broadcasting on the radio. People trying to get out of town. It's moving in. And then really Sunday night is when the worst happened. And I was in a hotel during that time.
The urgent messages that you give out, and one that I always, in hearing those stories from Katrina or other hurricanes previously, like Frederick in the 70s, late 70s in the Mobile, Pensacola area, was the people who were being stuck on, or even Opal, getting stuck on the highways and running out of gas. And so my admonition on the air prior to any hurricane was like, gas up, cash up, and get out.
Yeah.
Because, you don't wait, and because if you wait, like you said, gas stations are going to run out of gas. And then, as far as being prepared to get out, it's always important to be get a full tank of gas.
Yeah.
So the hurricane, so in the middle of the night, you're in a hotel.
Yep.
Was evacuating the hotel, obviously they didn't want you to leave to go to your apartment. So the station had you stay in a hotel near, I would imagine, their studios.
Yeah, no. I went to a hotel. My boss who said, "Hey, you're staying." He said, "Hey guys, you guys can either go to the Superdome tonight, I think it was the courthouse, or the hotel across the street." And I said to him, and I said this to my girlfriend, who was my producer. I said, "There's no way I'm staying in that hotel across the street. If this thing doesn't weaken from 175, that baby's coming down." It was a dump. It was rickety, and so we agreed that about 5 of us to go stay at the Hilton on the river in downtown New Orleans. My buddy, who was a reporter, Roop Raj, he's now an anchor in Detroit. He knew somebody who worked there, and so she lined us up with rooms. And so we knew that was just a better facility. So we went there. Thank God we didn't go to the Superdome, because you probably heard about the roof coming off, and some of the attics in there not getting their fix. It wasn't good. We were safe where we were, but I checked into the hotel. I'm on the phone, but the little bar cell phone, 10 o'clock Sunday night, 8 hours before landfall, walking in my room, 11th floor of the Hilton. And I told my sister, I said, "Hold on, Maureen, hold on 1 second." And then I could hear already the hotel creaking. It was like a slow creak back and forth. At 4 a.m, 2 hours before landfall, we all woke up, and I'm like, "Y'all awake?" And they said, "Yeah," because the beds were vibrating. The beds were shaking. So the whole hotel was vibrating. And at that point, I said, these windows could go at any moment. Let's go downstairs. So we went downstairs. They were putting everyone in the conference rooms who was in the hotel. National Guard was in the hallway. And I said, "Hey, listen, I work for NBC, WDSU. I need to do a news story, so I got to stay by these big picture windows to monitor the storm." And so they're like, "Okay." So they let me do that for about an hour. I saw a big metal drum trash can fly through the air. I saw some cool things. And eventually they said, "I don't care who you're with, go to the conference room. This is far too dangerous." So we did. Of course, we had no power. Here's the deal. They were going to hold a birthday party for a very well-known sheriff of a nearby parish, Jefferson Parish Sheriff Harry Lee, like a 50th birthday, or not, maybe his 75th birthday party. Anyway, they had steak, lobster, all these other things that they had bought for the party that was canceled because they couldn't have it because of the hurricane. And they said, "We're going to fire up our gas, grills or whatever, and cook this for all you guys." So we had 3 amazing meals of the best food you can imagine for probably 36 hours. Meanwhile, our friends who went to the Superdome, I don't even know if they had a granola bar. So it worked out well for us. And then the day after the storm, Monday, we walked back to the station. So we thought we were free and clear. Comm is down except for AM radio. So we had huddled around AM radio and got some info that way. And my boss said, "Come back Tuesday morning. We're going to do news stories." Tuesday morning, we all formed back up at the station. This is, again, 24 hours after landfall.
Right.
And I've never seen my general manager act, frazzled, but he was running through my newsroom. And I said, "Wow, I wonder what that's about." Within 10 minutes, he formed us up and he said, "The levees have broken and the water is starting to come down canal. We have to get out of here right away." And so he formed a convoy, a caravan. There was one way out that wasn't blocked. And within 1 hour, we were gone. And I didn't come back for 2 months.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. So
good night.
I didn't go back for 2 months. And so as we're trying to get our cars from the parking deck, that's when they let the people out of the Superdome. And so, we're seeing these folks come down the street who I'm sure they haven't eaten. They're probably not thinking clearly. Again, some of these guys and girls were addicted to various things.
Right.
And so we're just worried about our own safety. When we got our cars back to the station, I watched them take a trash can, throw it through the gas station right next door, and they just ransacked the gas station. So, fires were starting to be set in various parts of the city nearby. So it's just
surreal.
Armageddon, and we needed to get out.
Yeah, it's surreal. Wow. We always talk about it. Every storm's different, and as far as tropical storms, every hurricane's going to be different. And the, while Katrina weakened, if you will, some
It
before
did,
landfall,
no doubt.
still the wall of water that it pushed up, not only into the Mississippi River and the whole basin there, as well as over to the east in the Biloxi area and even Mobile Bay with the storm surge and things like that. You just, you like you said, well, we lived through Betsy. You cannot, you cannot do that. I try to tell everybody, every storm is different, and you
Every
never
storm
know
is
what's going to
different.
happen. It could be one tornado, like with Ivan, which hit in '04 toward the Florida Panhandle. But
Yeah,
these tornadoes came through the Panama City Beach area on a really far out feeder band, and
yeah.
it was terrible. So I guess the story there is you just can't ever. You need to prepare for everyone to be bad, and then just if it's not, great. If it is, you're prepared, kind of thing.
No
Um,
doubt.
that led in shortly after that is I think maybe the one and only time we've ever spoken in person,
Yeah,
when you came to visit, which I think was either your fiance or maybe I don't know if you were married at the time, but we were working
yep,
together in Panama City, your
yeah,
current wife,
yeah.
and you you made a transition up to Nashville from New
Yeah,
Orleans, and I'm not sure if I've connected the dots. Did you go directly from New Orleans to Nashville?
I did. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um,
Essentially, yeah. Go ahead.
Well, go ahead. Was that a job you looked to take, or was that something that came out of necessity because of what was going on in New Orleans?
No, I needed to get out of New Orleans. I was over it. So the woman you're speaking about, my wife who worked with you, Deanna, she accepted a job at Panama City Beach working with you before Katrina hit. And so Katrina hits, but she's like, I'm never going back because I start my new job in a week. So she worked in Panama City Beach. We were there for long distance when I eventually moved back to New Orleans for a year. And I just, New Orleans, the recovery was very slow. And I said, I got to move on to another market, but I've got to be within driving distance to her. So I targeted Atlanta, Tampa, Orlando, and Nashville. And because of an individual who I met during Katrina in Hearst Argyle, my former company, I met him during Katrina. He was the new news director who had just been hired here in Nashville. When my tape at the time came across, he's like, oh, I know this guy, and he said to the assistant news director, check him out, but he's good by me. And so that's how I got this job.
And so now Middle Tennessee's your home. You've got children there. You're
Yeah.
rooted there.
Yeah.
How is life? And I know every weather market has its own challenges, and you've certainly
Yeah.
had yours with severe weather and ice storms
Yeah.
and floods and things like that. How do you find your life right now? Are things going good?
Things are fantastic. I mean, we're very blessed. I mean, parents of young kids. I mean, I think your kids are grown, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Parents of young kids, their heads spinning. I heard something funny on the radio the other day, and someone said, like, hey, when you talk to an adult with young kids and you ask them, hey, what'd you do this weekend? And they say nothing, they just start smiling and chuckling with a big sense of relief. Life is crazy busy, but it's a good crazy busy. And so I love chasing the kids around to their events. That's the
Yeah.
best. It's a best gift in the world. Work is exponentially busier. You're still a broadcaster. You get it. I used to tell people, hey, my boss only cares about 8 minutes of my day, 2:30 on this show, 2:30 on that show, maybe a couple minutes or 3 minutes on that show. Otherwise, I can put my feet up on the table. And again, he wouldn't care. And it couldn't be any farther from that now, where I told you as I was coming to work this morning, typically I get here around 10 o'clock and I am nonstop. I mean, literally nonstop. I have a working lunch until 4 p.m. So 6 hours and it's pretty intense too, especially if there's weather, of intense work. Then I have an hour to catch my breath, check email, and then I'm back in it again and sharing the 6 o'clock news. And I'd get out of here about 6:30 in the evening. So it's an
Yeah.
exceptionally intense 8.5 hours. Man, has TV changed.
It has changed. When I first started, I had magnets and a metal map. So,
Real.
and frankly, it wasn't that long ago, but it seems like forever ago.
Yeah.
And I know that you have to get onto your day while we're
Yeah.
recording this podcast. So
That's
I'll
fine.
just ask one last quick question of you.
Yeah.
So you've got an intense workload. You've got young children, which is a challenge and also a blessing in and of itself.
Yeah.
What do you do when it's just you, when you just want to get a little bit of either a hobby or something just to kind of break away? What do you find yourself like most interested in, or that sort of, I'm going to go do this for something, for just to wind down?
Yeah, honestly, Justin, my way to relax is to work out. So I'll have a longer workout. I still lift, but now at the house. As soon as kids were born, I put it all in the bonus room, got everything I needed. So I'll lift probably 4 or 5 times a week. Nothing too crazy like I used to do back in the day. I run, 5, maybe 6 times a week, not too long. And I just love doing that. That takes me to a different place. And I'm addicted to that. That's probably my only addiction, that, and I guess fantasy football, which I started last year. I've never said yes to fantasy football because I didn't want to put the time in, but man, that's so fun. So I put some time into that. And I love tennis. I do play golf, but
Nice.
I'll play more when I retire or someday down the road. I just hate to get away from the family for 3, 4, 5 hours on a weekend. I just can't do that. But it's really being active. Those are my passions.
Seems like the football being played at Happy Valley is in a happy spot right now.
Just could be it, man. Let me find some wood. Yeah, we are ranked 3rd in the nation, 7-0 Ohio State this weekend.
There you go.
And we'll see. We'll see how that turns out. It generally doesn't turn out well with James Franklin. James Franklin's phenomenal, but what I'm saying is that he generally has a struggle against some of these big ranked teams. But this could be it. This could be it. We finally have an offense that has some pop. And we've never had an offense like this, at least in the last 30 years, since Kerry Collins was the quarterback back in '94 when I was a student.
Maybe when we go back and we look back at this podcast, this will be that pivot moment. But
oh my goodness.
Listen, our time is short today, and I certainly appreciate you giving up some of your day to come talk to us and chronicle your life, your passion in weather, and your career arc. Dan Thomas, WSMV in Nashville, Tennessee, we thank you so much for joining the podcast project today.
Thank you, Justin, so much. And if I just, before we click the button there, if I can leave, if you got some, high school kids watching this or whatever, once you figure out what you want to do, don't stop until you get there. Just put your head down, push forward, make all the smartest decisions you can to get to that passion, because once you get there, it's going to be worth it. So
perfect advice. Perfect way to end it. We appreciate it.
All right. My pleasure.
Have a great day.
You too.
Yeah. Please like and subscribe to the Weather Skool Podcast project. And for more great conversations with the country's top broadcast meteorologists, please go to www.weatherskool.com/about.